The regular season, had gotten teams to the Final Four in 88 and 94, but his own teams also had been prone to early round upsets.
Lute Olson has been through the whole gamut, been through people second-guessing him. They couldn't win the tournament.
Arizona entered the 1997 NCAA tournament as an unheralded 4 seed. In one of the greatest runs in tournament history, Lute's Wildcats knocked off 3 #1 seeds, including defending national champion Kentucky in the final.
We were definitely the underdog. And the great thing about that team, I think, should show anyone that you can't put on yourself and you can't think, well, we can't do it. Those kids felt they could do it all along.
Thinking back on that, I looked after the game and I said, you know what? We lost to a man that's been waiting a long time to get there, and I'm really, really happy for him.
When you look at the book 100 years from now, you're going to see Arizona 97 beat 3 #1 seeds. The nice thing about it is they'll be remembered forever because you can't beat that.
With 5 Final Fours, a national championship, and nearly 700 wins in his 30 years as a head coach, Lute Olson has silenced his doubters.
Arizona, who thought 20 years ago that Arizona would be one of the elite basketball programs in the country, in all honesty? If you've been to Tucson 20 years ago, you're saying, wait a minute, this is not going to happen, but it has happened.
He's got the statue out in front of the field house with his name on it. Tombstone in the graveyard that I go on sometimes on game days and pat the head of this tombstone and give me some divine intervention plus some good luck that day.
I mean, he was one of the early pioneers. He was a fellow that really stood up and spoke for college basketball.
Phog Allen was a basketball visionary, the father of the modern game. In 39 years as head coach, his genius both on and off the court helped turn Naismith's invention into a national obsession.
Phog believed that basketball could be coached, where Naismith didn't think so at all.
He made playing for him fun, but Doc would get into the position of the squirrel coming down out of the tree and then would look from side to side and demonstrate how the squirrel was fearful for his life when he came down. And you must, as a defensive player, be fearful that you'll be screened.
In 1927, some of the old guard of basketball wanted to outlaw the dribble and make basketball an all-passing game. Phog Allen said, what a ridiculous idea that is. From that very idea, the National Association of Basketball Coaches was formed.
They really were the ones that birthed the Basketball Hall of Fame, which was now in Springfield, Massachusetts. They also had the vision for a national championship, which we now call the Final Four.
The NIT had started in 1938 and quickly became very, very popular. A tournament in New York City run by New York City sports writers. Phog Allen believed that sports writers shouldn't be cashing in on college basketball, that the gate receipts should be going to the schools.
In response, Allen helped launch the NCAA tournament in 1939. 12 years later, near the end of his career, Allen led the Jayhawks to the NCAA title. Finally winning the tournament he helped create.
I think Phog Allen had as much to do with the development of basketball as any person who ever coached. I don't think it's a coincidence that the #1 and #2 coaches on a list of all-time victories are Dean Smith and Adolph Rupp, both bench warmers for Phog Allen teams at Kansas.
Everything you see in college basketball now, Doc Allen had his prints on.
In order to determine our 10 greatest coaches, we've assembled a truly elite panel. More than 100 ballots were sent to members of the Basketball Hall of Fame, the Basketball Writers Association of America, and the National Association of Basketball Coaches, as well as Division I athletic directors. And finally, thousands of you at home voted on CBS Sportsline to come up with our 10 greatest. Who will be #1? We'll count them down as Dell presents college basketball's 10 greatest coaches. Continues here on CBS.
This CBS Sports Spectacular of Allstate. You're in good hands with Allstate. Microsoft, providing software for the agile business. And by Kia and the all-new Sorrento SUV. Kia, make every mile count.
Nation's capital, where the outspoken John Thompson would make his indelible mark.
Coach Thompson had an awful lot of pressure on him. being a black coach at a predominantly white school. And when we would go to arenas, people would say some things that would absolutely shock you today.
Kids at the school got upset. And I remember them unraveling a banner. They called Mr. Thompson the N-word, and it was rolled out of the ceiling onto a white sheet, but it said, N-word Thompson must go.
When we got the team together afterwards, and Coach and I went to them in my office, and I cried because these young men were being subjected to ignorance and bigotry.
We had death threat situations occur, you know, particularly around tournament time and that kind of thing. And, you know, I mean, these things, this ignorance always prevailed, which never permitted me solely to be a basketball coach.
In 1972, John Thompson took over a Georgetown program which mustered a meager 3-23 record the previous year. It was evident early on that Thompson's unyielding presence and powerful style of teaching extended far beyond the hardwood.
Very vocal. He's very vocal. You know, he rants and raves out and carries on. We had a lot of hard practices, but a lot of the times pull us aside and tell us about life.
I never knew him as a coach until I came to play for him, but he got out the Wall Street Journal. And so all the guys were like starting to look around at each other. Coach, what's going to see? Some of you guys only view yourselves as basketball players. And if you truly just view yourself as that, the outside world will view you as that also.
Coach Thompson had a deflated basketball on his desk. And what the deflated basketball was a reminder to all of his players that you have to make something of your life after the air goes out of the ball, after your career is over.
Thompson brought his Hoyas to the NCAA tournament in only his third season and continued to build Georgetown into one of the most enduring and well-respected programs in the country. His growing success created a platform for Thompson to speak out on several social issues. In 1989, Thompson staged a walkout during a game to protest the NCAA's Proposition 42, which Thompson felt discriminated against minorities due to an emphasis on standardized testing.
He was an advocate for justice. He was a coach who was willing to not just talk about inequities, but was willing to act upon those inequities, and if it meant walking off a court as he did, that he was going to stand up for what he believed.
He's very misunderstood. You know, people will think, well, he's a hothead, he's a racist and whatever, and John Thompson is a guy that loves people and loves people being treated the right way.
In 1982, Thompson became the first African-American head coach in the Final Four, but was defeated in the championship game by North Carolina. 2 years later, Thompson's team returned to the championship game against Houston. This time, Thompson would not be denied.
He carried a lot for all the black guys that never got a chance, all the great coaches that he would always tell us about, all of them that should have had all these opportunities and didn't get them, and they were just as good. This was really so important to him to be able to accomplish this.
I think that when it all was said and done, all that messed with you because you were black or threw something out on the court because something happened or questioned you standing up for what you believed in. When we heard that final buzzer against Houston, I said, in your face.
Pete Newell was one of the great minds of college basketball on the West Coast. And, you know, in 1959, all Cal did was come to the Final Four that year and beat, on successive days, Oscar Robertson's Natty team and Jerry West's West Virginia team. I don't know if anybody in the history of the game has had a team beat such illustrious stars on back-to-back nights.
With him, you know, guiding the ship, we had a great deal of confidence. You know, we may not have been the most talented team, but we were very disciplined, we were well-conditioned.
When Cal's magical 1959 season ended, Newell was on top of the coaching world, but he was more relieved than exhilarated. The pressures of coaching seemed to be slowly killing him.
And once the game started, I was fine. But those minutes before the game, I just got worse and worse. I had a hard time even getting on the floor.
I could see that during the season, I don't think he ate, and I know he drank coffee and smoked cigarettes, and it looked like he lost about 20, 25 pounds per year, and he didn't weigh much to begin with.
My doctor had told me for about 3 or 4 years that, you know, I better, you know, change my routine. And I tried to, but I just couldn't.
In 1960, Newell led California back to the NCAA finals, but they were defeated by Ohio State. Shortly afterward, he retired from college coaching, citing health concerns. He was only 44 years old and at the peak of his success.
Pete just coached as a college head coach 14 seasons. And in those 14 years, he accomplished one thing that's very rarely been done. His team won the NIT in 1949. It won the NCAA championship in 1959, and his 1960 team won the Olympic championship in Rome. But way beyond that, I think Pete's influence on the game of basketball has been astronomical.
Pete Newell is 87 now and considered America's basketball guru. He has spent a lifetime helping others understand the game.
They don't get any better than him. I don't think a day goes by that I'm not reminded of some of the things that he's taught me and how helpful he's been in my career. And I've met so many people that he's touched.
He still has the passion to teach at this time in his life, not for pay. He will talk about the game and will try to teach anybody who's willing to listen about the game.
If you're a big guy today and you want to try to get better, or you want to have a chance to go to the pros, you go to Pete Newell's big man camp.
I'll stay in the teaching part of it. I don't know how much longer, but I still, I'm out there and I'm I can't pivot as well as I could, and I don't have a good first step anymore. I love teaching the game, and I still do, and I guess I always will.
Coach Newell arguably is the greatest teacher the game of basketball has ever had. And in addition to being the best teacher, he is the most humble, great coach that has ever lived. There's no question about it.
By the time Pete Newell was 4 years old, he had been featured in several Our Gang movie comedies. He was about to be cast for the title role in The Kid, one of Charlie Chaplin's greatest films, when Chaplin spotted Jackie Coogan doing a stage dance and chose him instead. Stay with us as Dell presents College Basketball's 10 Greatest Coaches, continues right here on CBS. After he ended his sterling career as coach at Oklahoma State, formerly known as Oklahoma A&M. He garnered such great respect that those who knew him never called him by his first name. He was always Mr. Iva.
There's nobody that I respected more than Coach Iva. He was as tough and demanding as any coach that ever lived that coached any sport.
You knew when you played Iva, you were going to have a terrible time scoring. His defense played as if their lives depended on it.
He said, nobody drives the middle, period. We don't want any easy layups. And we want to teach him that is our country.
Undress him, get in front of him, knock him on his fanny. Don't let anybody drive the heart of your defense.
He said, I don't give a dadgum if it's your last foul, you send him up to the nickel, if not the 10-cent bleachers. It takes one kid to get the snot kicked out of him, he won't come down the middle again. They start handling the ball like it's on fire.
A Wichita player drove down the middle, and Oklahoma State dumped him. And the kid broke his wrist. And Iva's response to that was, it really was the kid's fault and the coach's fault that the kid got hurt. He said, they should know that you don't drive down the middle on Oklahoma A&M.
Iva led the Aggies to college basketball's first back-to-back championships in 1945 and 1946. Their success was hard, developed in seemingly endless hours of simple, ruthless practice.
I loved it the first time we had a group meeting. You got out in front and held up a basketball and said, gentlemen, this is a basketball. What I'm going to teach you to do is put this basketball through that hoop. And it was basics all the way.
Get set up now. Hit it, hit it. Hit that, Kenny. Hit that, Joe. Hit that shot when we get there.
Practices were long and hard and very demanding. We'd go until Mr. Iva and Sam Aubrey, the assistant coach, got tired.
Follow that. There he is. Go on, go on, go on.
He loved to practice. There were no holidays for a basketball player. We were probably the only ones on the campus.
We practiced 3 times a day during the holiday season. And luckily, we might practice 2 times on a Saturday or Sunday or on Christmas, Thanksgiving. We considered it a day off when we only had 2 days.
Henry Iva retired in 1970 with 767 career coaching victories. To this day, his influence as the Iron Duke of Defense continues with the game's top coaches.
He had such a great line of players that played for him who later became great coaches. Eddie Sutton, Don Haskins. There's a whole line of coaches that played for Coach Iba.
All of them still use his defensive fundamentals. One time I asked Coach Haskins, I said, do you think there might be a better way to do this or a better way to do that? And he said, why would I change? Because I'm using the best defense there is.
You watch Gene Cady, you watch all those people that coach nowadays, Bobby Knight, you still see some of Mr. Iba's thoughts and beliefs in those coaches.
He's certainly one of the giants of the game of basketball. And then so many of his principles are still being used by so many of us today.